Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR podcast, brought to you by RaceForThePrize.com. I'm excited. We're talking trucks, we're talking Darlington, but I got a different stat that we're going to look at. And this is something that I'm always doing with the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet, is tinkering and twisting and manipulating, finding new ways to get an edge, new ways to help you out. If you purchase the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet at RaceForThePrize.com, Venmo, there's a PayPal, there's a Cash App, it's in the description, $25, $10 for the month. Get some of this stuff. Get the edge. Make it easy. Have some fun. Really enjoy the month of May. Racing. Darlington this weekend. Get in on it. We want you here. We got winners. We're having fun. Don't believe me? All right, let's look at the stat. Let's look at this thing that I am messing around with, which I think will probably be copied by other podcasters who tend to copy my work. It's all right. I won't say anything. But come on, guys. Come on. All right, that's fine. Hey, I'm flattered. If I see the stat pop up other places, if I see the style pop up, someone's just, maybe showing lap by lap data in their podcast now. All of a sudden. Anyway, so we're going to look at a driver's rating versus their finishing position. Simple enough, right? Like, this isn't rocket science. I didn't invent this idea. What we are looking at is, well, who's finishing better than where they're running? And because we often talk about this, and who's actually not finishing as well as they should. I mean, it's obvious, but hey, why not just go ahead and put the numbers on the screen? And you can see that. And that can maybe tell us a lot of different stories. So you can see these stats over here on the right side. And then on the left side, we have the Dietrich data, which is a very much like a rating rank as well. A more comprehensive analysis of the best drivers this season. And then over here, we have the driver rating versus their finish. So, for example, Corey Heim at Bristol finished 3 spots better than his driver rating. Or at Texas, Rajah Caruth finished 11 spots better. Taylor Gray finished 12 spots worse. Often, wrecks, mechanical issues are going to lead to some large numbers one way or the other on the individual perspective. And then if we look at from the wide scheme of bunches of wrecks, then we could see drivers who finish much better than where they run because of carnage and chaos at the end of the race. But we're looking for patterns, we're looking for drivers, and so let's just lay out, before we dig into the numbers, kind of the reason for putting this together. And I love going through the data, reflecting on these races, reminiscing on certain events and why certain things happened. Just fun. Also, looks like we might have some rain in Darlington, so this might be the data that you have to lean on. And you may not be looking at practice data today, so this would be a fun thing to look at in the sheet. So also fire up a bunch of these podcasts. Got them all ready for you. So can't watch any on-track action. You're probably not going to see any on-track action. Even if there isn't rain, you're just going to see paint schemes all day. If you're planning on spending your Friday afternoon watching actual laps, good luck with that. If it rains, it rains. If it doesn't rain, then you're looking at paint schemes. You may see one car complete one lap. Just tune into the podcast. All right, so the question we want to ask, when we look at these results and we look at this data, for example, let's just sort it. We'll sort it based on best to worst. And so what we're seeing here, and we're doing a median rather than an average, because an average would skew the data a little bit too much. And so a median score for Timmy Hill is that he typically finishes, and we're not looking at Daytona, we're not looking at Atlanta, we're not looking at COTA. He typically finishes 5 spots better than where he runs. And that makes a lot of sense in our mind. We can really square that with the contextual evidence of which our eyes have seen. Timmy Hill's just out there slugging away in the back. But he consistently finishes races through attrition, mechanical failures, wrecks at the end. He's going to get about 5 spots. That makes a ton of sense. Jake Garcia, maybe a bit of a surprise here. 4 spots better. And so you look at Jake Garcia, what he's doing this season. On average, if we do his Dietrich data at the tracks that we really care about, with Daytona, Atlanta, and COTA, he's about in the half pack of the field. He's ranking out about 17th. So think of it this way. He's around the 17th place driver running for Thor. Not terrible, not great. We wanted a little bit more coming out of Bill McAnally, but let's just think with this data how we could use it. If he on average is getting 4 more spots than that means he cracks into 13th place. Jake Garcia, if he starts far enough back at 6,900, getting to 13th, he's someone we need to definitely consider. I kind of want to put him on the back burner and not like Jake Garcia all that much. In previous podcasts, I kind of have really cooled on Jake Garcia, but looking at what he is doing at Las Vegas, staying out of trouble, doing a little bit better in the end. Bristol, staying out of trouble, doing a little better at the end. Doesn't work out at Martinsville, but Martinsville is pretty chaotic. Texas could have been worse. Kansas, staying out of trouble, doing what he needs to do. So, yeah, I think this number in particular helps tell us a little bit more about who we like. And that's what we start to question. Before we actually go into specific drivers and data, we want to really say, what do we mean with this data? And it's, does this concept of finishing better than where you run, is it just a matter of hanging in there and letting the race come to them? Is it just luck? Maybe. Maybe some are just biding their time and being methodical. I think that is definitely the equation with Timmy Hill. And maybe that's what Jake Garcia has been told to do. Maybe he is being more passive. Are they consistently doing it? When you are going through the data, if you have access to the fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet at racefortheprize.com, Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. When you're looking at the data, is regression coming? Could this guy be getting kind of lucky and eventually he's not going to keep finishing better than where he runs? Or you could look at the reverse. We'll go down to a guy that probably is due for some regression. We can simply just go to the bottom here. Stuart Friesen. Now think of it this way, because we want to make sure we're always looking at it through the DFS lens. He is routinely, consistently finishing worse than where he runs. Vegas, 5 spots worse than where his driver rating was. Bristol, 5 spots worse than his driver rating. Martinsville, Texas. All of those poor finishes suppress his salary. He's now at $7,300. He is better than a $7,300 driver. Eventually, there will be some positive regression, a return to the mean. He's got to start finishing where he runs at the very least, maybe even finishing better than where he runs. And his price basically fall into, the knife. How do you catch a falling knife? This thing's already hit the floor. Right? You got to let it hit the floor first. It hit the floor. It bounced. It hit the floor again. It's a dead cat. If it goes lower, great. But $7,300 for Stuart Friesen, it's a pretty good deal. Eventually, his luck will turn around. That's a way to look at it. Now, another way that we need to make sure that we're looking at this data. So, because this might be new to some people. The top cars, all right, and so we'll sort this based on price. Another way to make sure that you understand this data of finishing better than where you run. So we have our top cars at the top. Now you're seeing Kyle Busch ranked 17th, median of 0. Ross Chastain, doesn't really count. Corey Heim, good example. 17th, median of 0. Eckes, these guys are terrible at finishing better than where they run. Well, that's because they can't really finish better than where they run. They're already running up front. They can't move forward. So when we compare them to the entire field, yeah, their rank is going to be very low. Their average running position versus their average rating rank versus their finish, spots gained or lost, is not going to be a big number because they simply can't gain anything. They can't gain anything. When you compare and rank that against people who can, obviously they're going to get a bad rank. But what you want to do is do an apples to apples comparison. Just kind of do this on your own. Rather than lean on rank, just simply look here and say, all right, amongst these drivers, you're really not expecting any gains because they're already up front. But who's losing the least? Who's conceding the most spots often? Who's not quite finishing where they should often? And here we see Heim and Eckes have been the top 2. Sanchez and Majeski -1. -2 have not quite gotten the finishing results that they probably should have earned. So that's how you would use the data when looking at hogs or dominators or top tier drivers. If we see someone who is consistently just not finishing where they should, and that's going to be like a -3 or a -4, you may give the edge to a guy who's more of a -1 or a 0, saying that typically that their practice data lined up with their racing and everything kind of just went in sync. Whereas when we see a guy who maybe just gets into wrecks, like a Sheldon Creed, I guess, comes to mind in the Xfinity series, who could run really well throughout the race, but just not get it finished. Ricky Stenhouse in the Cup series, who could run really good laps and then just make a mistake and get a poor finish. And so his finish is always worse than his rating rank. But again, he's not a top tier driver, so he wouldn't factor in up here. But that's what we're looking at there. And then always make sure and be mindful of skewed events. Majeski is -2, but that -2 is definitely slightly hurt because, again, we're only using a median, but it is a little hurt by this -23. Would be much worse if we used average. So we use a median to make the numbers look a little bit more honest. So that's how you can use it for the top tier. Make sense? Should make sense. Okay, so we've looked at the top tier. We might as well look at the secondary tier. Or do you want to go to the bottom? What do you want to do? Well, you can actually talk back to me, can't you? It's not necessarily how these podcasts work. If we were having a live chat, then I guess we could decide, hey, you want a second tier, back tier? Well, it's already on the screen, so let's look at this group right here. Let's just slide down. Let's just go through it. We got Taylor Gray, pretty much consistently doing what he does. Did have a wreck at the end of the Kansas race, so he throws a -12 up. But other than that wreck in the Kansas race, Texas, Martinsville, Bristol, Las Vegas, very dependable. Again, he's running pretty close to the front, so it's very hard for him to put up big numbers and to gain more. He's finishing about where he runs, which is inside the top 10. Can't really gain, but he's also not really losing, other than that wreck at Kansas. Rajah Caruth, big gain at Texas. That's because he had an incident very early in the race, 2 of them, a spin and involved in that wreck at the beginning with Tyler Ankrum. So he logged a lot of laps in the back and then benefits from the cautions at the end. So he gets a big number there. So it doesn't necessarily tell us that he's doing it a lot. But one takeaway is that, hey, he did do it. He was able to overcome adversity. And that's one of the things that we can learn by seeing these big numbers is, all right, it doesn't mean you have to do it every single time. But every once in a while, when you pull out this big number, surprisingly, it does infer that this guy's got some talent. He's got some fight in him. Tyler Ankrum, overall, pretty consistent. 2, -1, -1, 0, 0 right there, top 10 driver. Again, he's running close enough to the front that he's not really going to ever have the opportunity to have a big boost. But he's also not finishing all that poorly. Now, you'll remember, like, he had a terrible Texas race. Yeah, so his rating was terrible and his finish was terrible. So that doesn't really show us anything. He did what he did. This isn't like, this sheet doesn't say bad versus good. This sheet is telling us on a given race who finished better than where they ran, who finished worse than where they ran. And he did what he did. Here is your positive regression candidate. All 3 of these guys really are worth keeping an eye on. Ben Rhodes, -2 on the season, 26th. We're not even looking at these. So his final Las Vegas, Bristol, nope. -6 at Martinsville, -8 at Texas, -2 at Kansas. His salary is down to $8,200. If he simply finishes where he runs, which, if we come over here and look at the comprehensive data analysis from the races that we like and compile it, he's been the 10th best driver. A top 10 from Ben Rhodes, and say, hey, whatever, imagine he actually finishes 2 spots better than where he runs. An 8th place finish at 8,200, it's bound to happen. It's due to happen. It's not within or outside of the realm of possibility. That's why we're running this data. Is we had a general inclination that Ben Rhodes had been unlucky, but what we do here is science. It is data driven. We watch the races. We also break down the numbers and say, all right, yeah, not only are we pretty confident from what we have seen that he has had bad luck, no, that's what the numbers actually say. He should be finishing better. He should be a top 10 driver. And when he puts together a complete race, he might find himself in the optimal lineup. Enfinger, on the other hand, 0, -1, -2, does have this -17 at Texas, but then bounces back with a +5 at Kansas. Kind of a little bit more all over the place. It's had some bad luck, has had some positive luck, but again, that's kind of what we would expect from a brand new team. It's not technically brand new, but it is a brand new alliance. It is a brand new driver. It is a brand new crew chief. So one would expect there to be a little less consistency. Crafton, on the other hand, has been possibly a little bit better than where he should be. Not really experiencing bad luck other than Coda. So he's been riding in the opposite direction of Ben Rhodes, and that's translated him into being, based on Dietrich data, the 7th best driver as opposed to 10th. These guys could easily be ready to flop at any time, which actually is kind of interesting. The driver that's been the best is the cheapest, and the driver that's been the worst and unluckiest is the most expensive. But when you are the defending champion, I guess that's the way that goes. And when you're an old man without a neck, like a turtle, sorry, Matt, then, yeah. Anyway, Tanner Gray, a little up and down. Has that big number at Texas, started in the back, was able to finish towards the front, works his way there, has a bigger number. But again, you're not really surprised to see some ups and downs and fluctuations from Tanner Gray. That's kind of, he's been a 15th place driver that sometimes can surprise for Tricon and sometimes lets down. We often like his brother. We always like his brother better. Tough luck. But those numbers seem to make a lot of sense. We've already talked about Friesen. Here we look at Lane Riggs, which is interesting. Riggs has been about a 16th place driver this season. I really don't have much interest in Riggs. I used to have a bunch for the rookie for front row, especially at $7,200. Like Garcia, I was cooling on him. But step back and say, hey, 16th best driver, could be worse. Some of his worst races are Daytona, so let's not hold that against him. He's about 16th in this field. And then we factor in that he's had some bad luck as well. If things turn around, he's the 16th place driver with bad luck. What if he just was neutral? Probably a 13th place driver. What if he could have good luck? He's a top 10 driver at 7,200. We look, -2 at Vegas, does get some at Bristol. -5 at Martinsville. -21 at Texas. Luck turns around a little bit here at Kansas. I'm not completely buying in, but like Garcia, I had cooled a bit on Riggs and Garcia. And it's going to be tough to play them on the slate with Kyle Busch at 1,500. But I'm warming up a little bit, folks. Then you look at Chase Purdy, who kind of has been a little bit more lucky. Guy that may not have been lucky in the past is kind of getting there. Or no, that's Jake Garcia. Has been very lucky. Sorry. Chase Purdy. Yes, there it is. Chase Purdy's not been lucky. Chase Purdy, look at this. Yeah, he's been the opposite of lucky, to be honest. 84 Dietrich data rating at Kansas. Got the pole. Had a good race. Pit issue at the end. Finishes 17 spots worse than his driver rating. Yeah, that's bad luck. Texas, not lucky. Okay, Martinsville, Bristol, not lucky. Overall, -3 at 29. Purdy could be due for some positive regression. Look, comprehensively, he's the 12th best driver. He's been very unlucky. Neutrally, he would probably easily be a top 10 driver. Put some positive luck on him, finishes 7th at 7,000. No one wants to roster Chase Purdy. You got to play there. Like Riggs, Purdy, Garcia are all interesting, all going to be overlooked. But when you watch this podcast and you look at this specific data, there's something there. I love finding gems, huh? What do you say? There's nothing like finding gold within the rocks hard and cold. I'm so surprised to find more. Always surprised to find more. It's fun. Fun finding these gems, digging into the stats, doing the work. So we do it the Fantasy NASCAR Spreadsheet. That's why you guys listen to this podcast. That's why you're on this team. That's why you follow this show. You like, you subscribe, you share. That's why you're one of us. You don't just want the picks. You want to dig for the picks. You want to search for the picks. You got the brush in your hand, scrubbing the rocks, inspecting the rocks. Is this pyrite? This is gold, baby. Digging. I'm digging, you're digging, we digging. Let's keep on digging. And let's go through as we start to close out this pod. Thanks for joining me. Look at Ty Dillon. Very positive, doing his job. And then he's not scoring point. Look, overall on the board, he's ranking 22nd. And he's finishing better on often better than where he's running. That's not by much, but he's not having bad races. I mean, really, yeah, he is. I mean, he's just having a bad race and staying bad. Yikes. Although we can give him credit, they did qualify well at Kansas, ran in the top 20 all day, finished in the top 20. So maybe they're headed in the right direction. But as I talked about in the previous podcast, you got the team's co-owner's kid coming along next week, scratching at the door, knocking at the door. Ty Dillon better get it together soon. Concerns. You've had enough time now, Ty, you and Shane, to get things together, and ain't working out. Bailey Curry routinely finishing better than where he runs. 5, 3, 4. Not quite a top. Yeah, well, yeah, he is right there. A top 20 driver, routinely finishes better. That's why we typically can put him into 15th place. And that's one of the things that you can do with this data is to give these guys, especially in the back, as we get to these guys in the back, I often give them very conservative projections. I'm not as aggressive, especially in the lower series, with the backpackers, with the Lemons class, the Le Mans, the LM class. Pretty conservative. But what you can do is say, all right, a very conservative projection for Bailey Curry on any given week, given that he's a 20th place driver, is around 17th. Then you factor in that on occasion he finishes 3 or 4 spots better. So then if you want to be aggressive and really are looking at a GPP build, you say, he's about 17th, 16th. We throw on another 3 or 4. That gets him to 14th or 13th. Then you're really starting to think, okay, now this guy maybe can work. That's a way that you can use this data, is to see in crystal clear form exactly how many spots you could add to the projections in your mind, especially for GPPs. Who tends to gain more spots? There may be drivers that you want to boost up some. There may be drivers that you don't want to boost up some, and the data will show it to you. Curry hasn't really been the best, but it's better than what it could be. Connor Jones, not a huge data size, but he is finishing a little bit better than where he runs. And at 6,300, we'll take any spot we can get. At 6,300, a Thor truck that just finishes the race and then finishes the race a little bit better than where it should. 21st, maybe boosts up 17, 18. Nothing to get too excited about, but also enough that you can't completely neglect him. Daniel Dye, been pretty consistent other than you go back to Las Vegas where he had a pit road issue or a wheel issue late in stage 3. He was running inside the top 10 in that race. A lot of drivers suffered mistakes on pit road or mechanical issues at the end of that race. It's early in the season. But after that, he's been pretty much doing what he needs to do. And so he's consistently finishing where he runs, which is 14th. He's been a little bit better. Again, another way to look at this data is overall, Daniel Dye is finishing where he runs. So then we say, okay, well, where is he running? Well, right here, he's running in top 10, top 15. And so you could pencil him in for that's probably where he's going to be. Let's drop down Jack Wood. Not a lot of data, but at least at Martinsville, really the only data that we're pulling from, he did finish better than where he ran. Finished the race, finished a little better, surviving the mayhem. Was probably a 22nd place driver. Get you top 20. Not too excited about that one. But it is $6,000. And he is going to be in a quality ride with Bill McAnally. So, again, a lot of guys that we just simply can't write off completely this week. All right, let's keep digging. Now for our favorite part of the podcast. The backpack. The slugs. Matt Mills, Timmy Hill, Brett Holmes, Mason Massey, Thad Moffitt, Mason Maggio, Spencer Boyd, Lawless Allen. We do this dance every week. Maybe this data will help us further understand who we like. So the guy that first stands out is Matt Mills, who overall is not finishing better than where he runs. It's been okay, but he's not making as many gains as everyone else. He's clearly hurt by this Las Vegas race where I can't believe it might have been a mechanical failure or a wreck midway through the race. Both the niche trucks had issues in that Las Vegas race. But he did get a boost at Bristol, but then reversed that at Martinsville. Texas fine, Kansas fine. But in comparison to the other drivers, like Timmy Hill, who routinely runs in the back, gains spots. And I know the first reaction for you is going to be that, well, that's not fair because Mills probably runs a little closer to the front, Hill's in the back, so he gets his stats skewed. That's really not the truth, probably. If we look at the data, Mills is not running that much closer to the front than Timmy Hill on average. You know, you think in your head like, well, Mills is running 20th and Hill's running 30th. And so at the end, though, Hill gets to 25th and Mills has got nowhere else to go. And so that's why the data, that's not really it. Hill's running closer to the front and Mills is running closer to the back. Hill's simply getting it done. This is an example of I don't think there's going to be a regression to the mean. I don't believe that bad luck would really come his way. It's just a methodical, small race team, slowly biding their time. We talk about this every week. These smaller organizations out there just turning laps, staying out of trouble. You know, Boyd is another one of those guys as well. First year with this Freedom Racing team. He's not really in play on the board, but he does illustrate the example that just out there turning laps, he finishes the race while others don't. And so he finishes better than where he runs. Thad Moffitt and their Faction Racing, another brand new team, for the most part out there turning laps, trying to keep the car clean, build their program week after week, get notes. Maybe a little bit more in the DFS conversation, but just barely. But what they really do in the discussion is help us understand the idea of turning laps, surviving, gaining spots in the end. I'm a survivor, not gonna give up. I'm a survivor, keep on surviving. Demonetized. Brett Holmes overall has been pretty solid. This is one where might be a little bit of a surprise. Look, we get it for Timmy Hill. But Brett Holmes, give the kid credit, who's routinely running around 23rd in this backpack. So he's routinely battling and typically winning the class. He's winning the Lemons class. And not only is he winning the Lemons class, getting a little bit of a boost every time at the end by making sure he runs all the laps and keeps out of trouble at the end with an average gain of 4, finishing 4 spots better than where he runs. So not only take care of his stuff, not only is he winning the Lemons class, but he's also benefiting from the attrition when Taylor Gray wrecks at the end. or Tyler Ankrum takes himself out early in the race. When these top tier drivers DNF or suffer some sort of issue late in the race because they're pushing too hard. Then Holmes, the hare, well, he's not the hare, he's the tortoise. That's Matt Crafton, you said. Yeah, it kind of is. Wins the race, at least the DFS race. Was that helpful, folks? I bet that was helpful. Thank you for joining me. Fantasy NASCAR podcast is awesome. We're number one in your hearts. We're number one in the world. We're often duplicated, often copied, replicated. You'll see this stuff all over the place. You'll see the style simulated, but never, ever the same. Maybe that's a good thing. I'm trying not to be salty. I should be flattered. I really should, that when I see my style and my techniques borrowed, as we shall say, should be flattered that people want to be me. But you can't be me. I don't want to go down this route. It's get ugly. We could keep positive vibes here. Let's just be flattered. Let's be flattered that people like us, that people see what we're doing, see the winning, see the fun on the screen, see the entertainment times. Let's take those good vibes, go into this weekend. Hopefully this helps you make some better picks. Mash that like button, subscribe, share, recruit more people to this channel. $25. Give me some Mickey D's. Come on, folks. Do it for little Dono, the van man. He'd appreciate it. He very much would. I would appreciate it as well. Hopefully I'm helping you out. If not, still glad that you're watching these videos. Big shout out to Colin, making the shorts. It's great. As always, man, I'm blessed. You guys are here. Love you guys. Trip to Light, fantastic.